Good morning. Yes, we are.
Thank you. Oops, hold on one second. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the June 21st meeting of Community Planning and Economic Development. First item is approval of the minutes.
No objection.
Okay. The second item, I'm going to hand it over to our town manager to introduce our speaker for the Wayfinding project study.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. It's our pleasure to welcome back our Wayfinding signage team from Merge. Merge previously met with CFED a few months back, I think it was back in February, to update our council on their work that dates back to late fall. For folks who were at that meeting, you may recall that they did share some results of a townwide survey that was done to seek input from our residents and businesses, looking at frequent destinations throughout town, destinations that folks may recommend to people visiting West Hartford, and then certainly destinations that could be connected via wayfinding signage, among many other things. But today they'll update the council on our progress from February through this month. And through you, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to Kristen Gorski, our Economic Development Coordinator, who has been leading this project for us. And Kristen can introduce Glenn Swantek, who's here from Merge. And I think someone else might be here from Merge as well. So Kristen, through you, Madam Chair, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Good morning. For the record, Kristen Gorski, Economic Development Coordinator. I'm really excited to bring to the Council Committee today Merge and some exciting updates as we make significant progress on the Wayfinding Signage program. So today I am joined by the full team here at Merge, Glenn Swantek, who will be leading the presentation today. And then also he is joined by colleagues John Bozio as well as Lauren Harrison. So we have a presentation that Glenn will walk through. And again, this is kind of where we are in terms of the project as a whole, and then kind of bringing you to where we are currently. And we're really excited specifically to be able to share some preferred design option with you and to talk about a process in terms of how we got to this design option that we're presenting to you, which we had also presented to the Design Review Advisory Committee back in May. So with that, I will turn it over to Glenn, who will lead the presentation. So Glenn will do a presentation, and then as always, happy to take any questions towards the end. Glenn?
Yeah, thank you. Let me share my screen here. Hopefully you can all see that. Can you see our logo there?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Yeah, thank you all for having us again. We are currently wrapping up the first phase of this project, which was the wayfinding analysis and the schematic design of the West Hartford wayfinding program. Just what we're going to go through today is a two-part presentation. The first part is the wayfinding analysis, where we've done an online survey. We want to talk about districts, the destinations, parking, and just so that you're aware, we are coordinating with the Stantec master plan that is going on, and we've had a meeting with them. And then after this meeting, we're going to have another coordination meeting with them to show them where we are with the project. Then the second part, which is the part you probably want to see, is the schematic design, which we want to establish that this will be the basis for design. That is distinct from the surrounding communities, because you have adjacent communities that do have wayfinding. So we want to make sure that we're looking at that. The relationship to what you have that's out there existing. You have an existing gateway, you have a town hall sign. So we want to make sure that it's compatible and that it uses some of those elements. And then any opportunities to include history, and of course the incorporation of the brand, which I think was the main emphasis for the preferred design option that we're going to show you today. So these are all the stakeholders that we've met with. I'm just going to go through these. these names here. These are we've had a lot of input, and so far it's been a really great process to gather feedback. So quickly, you've seen a lot of this stuff before, but we've done surveys, online surveys, and gathered a lot of responses. Looking at modes of transportation, digital wayfinding tools, how hard is it to find parking, things like that. And we took all of that information and we worked it into our analysis. You might have seen this before, where we talk about that it's not just about the signage, it's about home technology, it's about place technology when you get there, the environment and the spaces, and any support information. And we've been gathering that information as we've been going through this process and putting it into the wayfinding analysis so we can understand, are there things that are going to remain? Are there things that we can build upon? Or are there recommendations that you might need as we move forward? Looking at digital wayfinding, what are the preferred modes? We asked what the preferred modes are, whether it's a mobile app or an interactive kiosk. Real-time parking, I think, was something that scored really high when we were asking questions in the survey. Orientation map. This is something that we want to incorporate into the program. You have an existing map, but there are a lot of things in here that maybe are not consistent, and you also have an existing blueback square map as well. We want to do something that not only identifies the districts, but is simpler, cleaner, maybe incorporates some architectural elements as landmarks or landmarks in general on the map. So we're going to look at that and redesign that map as well. You have landmarks, you have a lot of murals, public art, architecture. So those are things that we're looking at when we're talking about wayfinding. And then, of course, your existing signage out here. And we just did a basic inventory of what you have. You have your Trout Brook Trail, you have your trail signs, your park signs, which we think are good. We necessarily don't want to redesign those. I think there are elements that can remain, and we can just build off of that if we think that there are additional sign types that maybe you could build on. But your parking signs are inconsistent. All of those need to be looked at and updated. And then you have your existing gateway sign. How does that fit into the wayfinding design that we're doing? So the information hierarchy, you are welcoming somebody to West Hartford. You then direct to districts. You have a lot of business development or business districts. You also have districts in the town center that are sort of sub-districts. You welcome to the district, direct to parking, direct to destinations, get to the destination, and then trail back to the highways. In between there, once you get out of your car, you park your car, you need information as a pedestrian, especially in the town center. So we looked at all of the gateway entry points. You've got a lot. You've got over 20 entry points. So we have to think about a way. We're not going to put a big, huge gateway at all of these entry points. So it's really a system that we have to develop. We have to think about, you've got a few that are existing. Maybe they get retrofit. Maybe there's a, like when you're coming off of the highway here, there's not a lot of room to put a gateway because of the way the interchange works. So maybe it's a combination sign of a vehicular and a town gateway where you can have a header that says, West Hartford or welcome to West Hartford, and then, have directional information on there as well. So we've surveyed this a little bit, and we've come up with some suggestions on what the size of these different gateways should be. It might also just be that the green DOT sign that's out there remains. So we're going to work through this in the next phase of the programming. Districts are a lot. We've talked about districts a lot when we were doing this. You have districts here that are not connected, with the exception of Blueback Square in West Hartford Center. They are all separated by, distances, and where we have to connect them somehow through a vehicular sign system. So we decided early on that this was not going to be a color-coded system. you have too many districts. There's too many colors. So that was something out of the analysis that we determined. They're not adjacent to each other. So, there's not a smooth transition between them. We also looked at the circulation, arrival points, and how people get around. Where are those major decision points going to occur? So when we're talking about the districts, we've sort of outlined them. Some of them have fuzzy boundaries as well. Maybe like Corbin's Corner. I don't know if they have a hard boundary. I guess maybe all of them kind of have, maybe some of them have solid boundaries. But so that'll inform us when we design the orientation maps. Maybe it's just using the name over an area instead of having a full, defined area. The one thing that we talked about a lot was, the terminology of how things are named. So, is the district town center? Is that how it should be identified? Or will it be two separate districts of Blueback Square and West Hartford Center? When we did the digital survey, it came back 50-50, which really didn't help us out a lot. Meaning, should it be called town center alone, or should they be two separate districts? So that was, I think our general opinion is that it should be called one, town center. And then when you get there, maybe creates almost a sub-district through pedestrian wayfinding and through kiosks. But we're still kind of working through that, but I think that's the general direction we're thinking about going in. Destinations, we start to plot out where the destinations are located within the the system. And sometimes putting these on a map, we can create clusters, and it can start to show where the adjacent destinations are to each other, whether it's like two parks, two historical sites, government sites next to each other. That allows us to start grouping them when we're in the next phase of programming, and we understand that, those three destinations will always be listed on that sign together. When you look at the town center, you see a lot of blue dots there. Your destinations are mostly parking within town center. And then the red are government, destinations. So, that informs, and then over here you have the trail. So that tells us that this is going to be a parking heavy system within town center. So, you would arrive to town center, you would then start to look for parking, and then you would get out of your car, and then the pedestrian signage or the kiosks would then direct you or give you information on if you want to go to, the library or town hall. So as we start to look at the pedestrian experience, we start to plot out where are those opportunities. Where will you get information like a pedestrian totem, which could be four-sided, which could provide historical information, or a map, could even reinforce the district that you're in. So Blueback Square, or town center, or West Hartford Center. So those pedestrian signs can then also be located at points of exit from the parking garages and the parking lots. So we're starting to identify general locations, but then we'll come back and we will look at those specific destinations. This is something that's going to be really important, that we coordinate with Stantec, and that we understand how it fits into what they're designing and what their planning is going to be, because these elements can be an extension of that plan. We start to look at all the terminologies and how they break out on a sign panel width. This is a typical width of a single post vehicular directional sign. So you can start to see that there are some destinations that might require abbreviation, or in some cases maybe have to go to 3 lines. We don't like to go to 3-line copy on vehicular signs, but sometimes we might have to. But for the most part, everything kind of fits with some abbreviation. Then when you think about the parking, what you have out there now is we want to establish that identity, that parking piece, single identity. so that whenever you see that, whether you're on the town website, whether you're on an information brochure, the parking directional signs, when you get to the lot, that should all be consistent, even on kiosks. So currently what you have out there now is not consistent. It looks kind of consistent with the blue and the white P. I don't know where the orange came from. That's sort of one of these things is not like the other. But we want to make sure that that's all consistent. And, when we look at it, is it, this is the standard P arcing that we don't want to do that, but we want to either do something that's enhanced or something that's even custom to West Hartford. But as we look at the different sign types, there's going to be parking trailblazers, parking directionals that identify a lot or a garage. Maybe as you have all of your parking lots are hidden behind your storefronts. So we want to create those connections and start to understand what those connections are. So maybe creating a portal or a parking lot walkway that from Farmington Ave, you can identify that there's parking back there, and it can help you get to the lot that you need to go to. And then redoing the parking garage identification signs so that they are all consistent. We can maybe reuse those existing structures, and just switch out the graphic on there, but that's something we want to look at and we want to do as well. We are looking at the new proposed circulation that Stantec is proposing. So we know that that this road here by the town center garage could potentially become an open. Currently it's closed. Could potentially become open, but so we are looking at all of that and where people enter and exit into all of the garages and the lots. Like I said before, with the parks and trails, I think you have existing elements out there that we want to build upon. But this is just a generic sign. These are just some generic signs that could be added to make it a more robust system. And I think in some cases that we are viewing the trails as a pedestrian connection or a multimodal connection, actually, especially to town center. So we want to make sure that we have those wayfinding tools in place to make those connections. These are just some generic menu of the different sign types that we can have. Having a trailhead ID, which I think you do have out there, that is visible from the roadway, where you can see that, oh, there's a trail over there. I didn't realize that was something that there was a trail there, and I could go back and do that at another time. Then we look at the wayfinding system. These are just we try to identify what are the sign types that could be a part of this system. We know that you have some existing gateways out there, whether that's one that we're going to keep or one that maybe could potentially be retrofit with the new design. Town gateways, vehicular plus town gateway combinations, district arrival signs or monuments, whether that's a large gateway type sign or a banner. Vehicular directionals that are over 25 miles an hour with 6-inch high copy, then lower speeds like in town center that are 4-inch high copy, and then smaller in scale. Parking trailblazers, parking sign family, pedestrian totems, pedestrian signs. And then we want to look at your current bicycle directional system, and we have started looking at it. We want to keep that system in place that you have, but maybe we enhance it a little bit by like what I was talking about with the trails, by adding destination signs that tell people when you're on that bike route, that there's a destination this way, so many miles, or a destination this way, so many miles. Because we think that, if people are riding their bikes, they want to know what's adjacent. And especially when you're going through the town center, and we'll coordinate that with Stantec. So yeah, like I said, we've been working with Stantec on bicycle parking and all the circulation changes, switching two-way, LaSalle to two-way, and looking at their physical elements to see how we fit into what they're planning on doing. I'll pause now because I wanted to get through that rather quickly. Has any questions about the wayfinding analysis?
Does anyone have any questions?
I can go back to any slides if you have any questions.
I think Ben has a question.
Just one question. The term town center, is that
Yeah.
one you sort of polled on, or is that something you're just kind of bringing in? Because I know obviously the blueback versus the center issue, I'm not surprised at all that 50-50. But the broader term town center isn't one that I'm familiar with very often, and that I think people, it's usually the center and blueback. I mean, that's something like you're bringing in as sort of a generic labeling of that area, or is that something that your discussion groups came up with as a?
We have heard that in our discussions that area, the center. So I think the center has been called town center, right? I don't think Blueback Square has maybe been called town center, but I think what we're proposing is that it becomes or what we heard when we first started talking about it was that whole area could be considered town center. And I think that for us, when we're putting together these signs, and like when we were talking about that information hierarchy, where you want to direct to a district because that gives you a further reach, right? So if you're coming off of the highway and it says town center, that allows you to have more space on that sign to have other destinations on there. So if you had Blueback Square and West Hartford Center, then you can only have, well, in Connecticut, you can have 4, sometimes 5 destinations on a sign, but we typically have 3. So we're trying to get that a little bit of a further reach from a vehicular standpoint. I think what I was saying was when you get to town center, then you can direct to Blueback Square and West Hartford Center as sort of sub areas or sub districts.
Right.
I'm not sure.
I guess that seems to me to be a sort of a relabeling of the area. And listen, I don't have that strong opinion on it, but to my ear, that hurts, right? I mean, that's one of those where that just feels off to me as a new. It's kind of like the whole Weehaw versus West Hartford thing. I mean, that seems new to me, and a little bit, again, a little jarring. And I'm
we didn't make that.
curious as to how people, again, it's one thing to say generically if you're talking about it, that's what you're going to refer to it as, but I don't think in people's normal vernacular anybody's calling it town center, or at least I haven't really heard that. But
Yeah, I don't think we made that name up. I think that name came out of some of the stakeholder meetings as how people refer to it.
Yeah, it did. So we're just.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah, sure.
Great, excellent. So I just want to mention, based on Glenn's initial introduction, I think that, we're still trying to figure out what the correct terminology is and what the correct branding is. And I think that, if you are somebody that is hyper local or local, the distinction between West Hartford Center and Blueback Square, and you think of them as separate areas. But if you're somebody who's coming regionally from out of state, you don't know the difference necessarily. And so I think that specifically from a traffic driving perspective, a tourism perspective, it's trying to unify the 2 districts while keeping them distinct. Obviously, they're very different from one another, but complement one another. So figuring out a way to continue to bridge that gap and unify them and coming up with this kind of larger brand name. So, I agree. I've heard frequently from, businesses and folks within the community that name town center, but if we agree it's not correct and it should be something else, then, we're happy to try and explore that a little bit further. But again, it's trying to come up with a more unified brand for that entire area of our downtown.
We haven't really heard one way or the other that this is the way to go. So we're still kind of in the middle here, and we'll do whichever way we decide to go. We can figure out how that's going to work, but we just, like Kristen said, we can work that out and try and do that. So yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Winograd. Were there any other questions on this part of the presentation? I can't see everybody right now, so if someone has a question, just go ahead and ask it. Okay, it doesn't look like there are any other questions on that part of the presentation.
Okay, so I'll move forward through the schematic design. You know, when we start to do the schematic design, we often put together a board like this where we start to look at, you know, things like the existing brand and the logos that you have, and see if there's any consistency or things that we can pull from, or if you know there you know, things that we want to put in. I think what we determined was that it's definitely not a district logo or color coded driven system, just based on the geography and then all the different identities that are out there for the different districts. And we know that those identities are not going to change, and that we're going to those districts are going to keep their unique identities. We know we want to be distinctive from surrounding communities. We put pictures up here of Bloomfield and of Hartford, so we want to make sure that we're not, you know, similar to those. The existing gateway and the town hall signs are not going to go away. So how does our system fit into that? The townwide areas are currently vehicular focused, and town center will require a concentration of parking and pedestrian signs. We want to coordinate with the master plan of Stantec and consider inclusion of art and history. And then also, you know, the inclusion of brick. You know, we noticed that your existing gateway has sort of this giraffe stone type stone here, but most of your like this sign has brick. So those hard elements, those hardscaping elements, you know, how are those going to be incorporated, and where can they be incorporated into the design? So these are just sort of, before we do put, you know, pen to paper, these are the things that we start to look at. So we went through the process and we presented a bunch of different ideas to the steering committee, and we came up with this recommended design direction based on a lot of presentations and meetings. It is identity and brand focused. We are using the West Hartford brand, the West Hartford colors, and we are bringing it in, you know, to this design, and so it is really brand focused. We took some of those sign types from the menu, and we, like the town gateway sign, the vehicular directionals, district gateway, like when we took the banner, district directionals, parking trailblazers, parking directionals, and we put them, and we're just showing them in a menu here. So that first sign type where we have, you know, you arrive into West Hartford, you see a town gateway, it has the brand on it, elements of the bringing in the brick, having the incorporation date 1854 cut out of metal and wrapping around the side. With the vehicular signs, we tried to make them as consistent as possible. And it's almost a kit of it is a kit of parts, really, where when you're coming off of the highway or you're at the boundaries of West Hartford, at the header portion, you can have that West Hartford brand identity up there, and then you start to direct to districts. So you get off of the highway, you direct to those districts. Then when you get into the fabric of those districts, then you start to direct to destinations. The parking trailblazer signs using that parking P that identifies, you know, all the parking lots, and bringing in the brand colors on that parking P as well. The poles have the finials that are from the you know, the town center, so bringing that element in, but using the yellow as an accent, not really as the primary color. You'll see that you know, just having that hint of yellow, similar to your brand, where you have a hint of yellow around the border and on the dome there, is our interpretation of the brand and how it can be put into the signage. Then, you know, when you get to like, you know, the parking garages, having identification at the lots and the garages, bringing in real-time parking as a possibility, and really taking all of the information that you have out there currently on, 2 or 3 different signs and combining it into one sign type. So identifying the name of the lot or garage, saying that it's public parking, identifying the entrance, which I think is something that a lot of people don't know, or have a hard time when you have multiple exits and entrances into a garage, and then having the any rules and regulations or rates as part of that sign as well. And then the pedestrian totems, which are 4-sided, where you can have information, interpretive information, pedestrian directional information, or maps. And then also pedestrian signs that could be mounted to existing infrastructure, like your poles that are out there now, or they can also have be a standalone element. I have some crop-in views that we can go through. So the town gateways, you can see how it's cut out here on the side. This is really just applying your brand to those signs. And then the directional system, which has the header, which is really a U channel up here. So where that's painted a color, attaches to the pole, but then that back bracket where it's not only providing accent color, but it's also bracing the sign panel, because this is a flagged and cantilevered system. The flagging of the pole is beneficial, especially when you get into areas like Town Center or Blueback Square, where you're kind of limited to the positioning and where you can put these. So by getting the panel flagged away from the roadway, that helps us, with clearance and things like that. So some more close-ups. And then, just directing to the garages. Using that parking P, so you identify that is distinct for West Hartford. And the pedestrian kiosks, and having these, and these might also have maybe 2 sizes. We're just showing this as an example in schematic design. When we get to the next phase of design development and we program what the different sign types are, this menu will then get expanded out to all of the different sizes and components. Having that information eye up here on the sign panels. So really the system is there are a lot of U-shape extrusions that create the system. And then just a couple of photo renderings of what they could start to look like in the environment. So, bringing in the brick, because you do have a lot of brick in the town center area. But this is what I was talking about before, creating that portal that identifies where public parking is, so that which lot, identifying the lot and that it's public parking. And then, identifying those parking lot entrances with that parking P. So with that's the option 1, and when we did show a few other design options that were even more traditional, but we're not going to get into those because option 1 was really the design option that was preferred by the majority of the steering committee. So but I just wanted to show you that we did do some other options as well. So next steps moving forward, we're going to create the sign location plans in July through September. So we're going to do it in desktop planning. We're going to send that for a review. Then we're going to go out into the field and look at all of the locations, photograph, and create the sign location plans, which will help us with sign type quantities. We'll start to understand what the scope of the project is. We'll start to put together budgets, and coordinate that with the programming. Then we'll do the design development. We'll take that preferred design option number 1, and we will expand it out to all of those sign types. We will put together a DOT review submission where all of the signs that are within DOT review in their jurisdiction, they will review those and make sure that they are comfortable with what we're doing. And then October through December, we're going to do we'll wrap up our documentation package, which will give you all of the sign type dimensions, colors, materials, all of the details and specifications. You can then go out to bidding sometime next year, whether that's the whole package or whether that's done in phases. As we develop those budgets, we'll also develop a phasing plan, which will help guide you to what parts of this program could be implemented. So with that, we'll have any questions and hopefully we can answer those. And I can go back to any slides.
Is there anyone that has any questions? Again, I can't see everybody because everybody's at the top, so.
Councilor Beginnis, I have a quick question. It's
Okay.
Councilor Blanks, and I apologize for joining the meeting late. However, I did go over the presentation that was sent to us. So I just have a quick question. Is probably more of a technical question, and that is the directional signs opposed to the pedestrian signs. And I know there has to be some rationale, but could you explain the height, I guess the height difference of the directional signs in terms of the imagery, where you see the individual, I guess, between 6 feet and above, and then the I guess, maximum height of the sign? Can you just give me a little background about that? Because I'm sure there's a rationale why those signs are at that height. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so we design our systems based on from a vehicular. These are the vehicular signs. So from a vehicular standpoint, the MUTCD, which is the DOT's manual for traffic control, uniform traffic control devices, there are ADA requirements that it has to be 7 feet to the bottom. We position ours at 7'6", which are a little bit higher. So all DOT signs that are within the right of way are supposed to be positioned this way. The terminology is sized according to the view, the legibility, and the view, and how somebody views it as they're driving in a car, depending on what speed they're going. So if you are in a downtown area and you're traveling 25 miles per hour or less, the sign height, the height is 4-inch high copy. And then if you're traveling in a higher speed, you have to have a 6-inch high copy so that it is legible as you're traveling at that speed. All of these signs are retroreflective, so the background and the copy are reflective at night. So when you shine headlights on it, it will be reflective. From a pedestrian standpoint, those signs are positioned so that the copy height of those is smaller, because you don't want somebody who's driving in a vehicle to stop and read those signs. Mm-hmm. They are sized according to be viewed as a pedestrian, and they're often positioned away from the roadways so that they cannot be read from a vehicle. That's sort of a safety standard there. We do follow the ADA. Like if we're mounting to a particular sign pole, there is a zone where you're supposed to, these signs are supposed to be mounted, and they're not to protrude a certain distance off of the base of a sign, off 4 inches from that distance, because people who they can't walk into them. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying we do follow standards when we design the signs, and we are aware of those standards.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much for this. Since I'm new, obviously this was very informative for me. If no one has any additional questions,
it looks like Kristen has a question.
Oh, okay, sorry, I couldn't see her right now. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Through you, Chair. So, I just wanted to say, thank you to Merge not just questions, but I think given the fact that we are where we are at this point with design and the phasing within this project, understanding that this is the option that we're hopeful to move forward with because it was, supported by the steering committee and then also unanimously supported through DRAC. We were hoping to be able to also just get some quick baseline, reactions from council committee in terms of your feedback on this design and kind of an okay to move forward with this option that we're excited about.
Does anyone, Councilor Winograd? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, kind of as I said before, the design aspect look, certainly seems good to me. I do like it. Kind of as I said, the labeling is a different issue. I'm not sure what the time frame is on that. The whole town, the designation of the center, and I think that probably should have some more discussion. But in terms of the basic structure of the signs, I do like them, and I agree. Preferred this over the other options, and also defer to DRAC and others on their much better expertise and judgment than I have on this kind of stuff. But
so what we could do next, Madam Chair, is assuming everyone else is okay with the design, is we'll direct Merge to move forward with that design concept. And you saw some of the work that is planned for the summer and into the fall, looking at locations, and then we'll start bidding. During that time frame, we can internally continue our dialogue with Merge and our inside team around, and I get exactly what Councilor Winograd is saying in terms of relabeling, rebranding Town Center to include Blueback and West Hartford Center, and coming up with an appropriate name for that. And maybe it is maintaining Blueback Square and West Hartford Center, but we will we'll continue that conversation and bring that back to CPED in the fall, if that's okay with the committee.
That's fine with me. Is that okay with everyone else?
We remove the background and go back to.
Kristen, I have heard what you've said when I've had family members that have come into town, and I'm like, we're going to go to the center, and then they name a store in Blueback, and I'm like, no, that's Blueback, and they're like, I don't know what the difference is. It's all in the same place. So what you said about people that are coming in, like, we know because we're here, but people coming in from outside, I have heard that they think it's the center. It's all the center, Blueback and what we consider the center.
I appreciate that. And I've heard that from the businesses too. And candidly, they've said on a sunny, day in the summer, customers will be walking by as they have their doors open, and up in the center, they'll say, hey, on the phone, I'm walking through Blueback Square right now. So yeah, I think it's a tourism thing. So again, we'll work really, really hard to understand what the best direction is to move, and definitely be respectful of all of the information that we learned here today.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Glenn.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we'll just log off now. Thank you. Thanks all.
Thank you.
So now we'll be moving on to communications.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have one update under communications that I wanted to provide the committee, which involves proposed bike lanes on Boulevard, which, as we know, would remove the ability of residents to park on the street on the south side of Boulevard. And over the last couple of days, we've looked at alternatives to our original design, but we what we propose at this point is to engage our consultant, FHI and Tool, who, as you know, is part of our Vision Zero work. We also contracted with them to update our bicycle facilities plan, which has not been updated since 2016, actually, when it was designed. So, and the vision of our bicycle facilities plan is to provide a seamless network of on and off street bike routes linking destinations such as schools and parks and public transportation. And the key to that is from one end of West Hartford to the other in an accessible and comfortable manner for people of all ages and abilities. So eventually, what we want to do is connect the north and the south and the east and west throughout town. And for north and south, that includes Mountain, South and North Main, Trout Brook, South and North Quaker. And then from east to west, we have New Britain Avenue, Sedgwick and Park, Boulevard, of course, Farmington, Asylum. Our POCD even goes as far to say is, providing a safe bicycle route from West Hartford to Hartford, which makes those east to west routes even more important. But through our work with FHI and updating our bicycle facilities plan, we can determine which streets provide the best route, how best to design those routes to best accommodate all users. So that's bicyclists, that's pedestrians, that's automobiles. And this may include looking at parking alternatives in some cases to accommodate all users. So as a consultant continues their work on the bicycle facilities plan, we would propose to come back to CPED with formal recommendations and looking at which, as I said, which streets make the most sense and what design on each of those streets makes the most sense, taking into consideration our complete streets policy, our POCD, as well as the bicycle facilities plan. So I will pause there, turn it back to you, Madam Chair, and the committee to answer any questions that folks may have.
Does anyone have any questions on that? No? Okay. Oh, wait. Councilor Poland.
Thank you. I was trying to be respectful of the other committee members, or of the actual committee members, since I'm not on the committee, but appreciate that update. And so just to clarify, this is going to be put on pause for right now while a more comprehensive plan is considered, and then that will come back to this committee in the fall, perhaps.
Yeah, so we would, like I said, and I appreciate the question, Councilor Poland. It is important for us, as a community, to consider all of these routes, specifically, gaining access to the entire, essentially all corners of town. So what we would want to do, is engage our consultant to take a look at not just Boulevard, but, Farmington, New Britain Avenue, Sedgwick and Park, Asylum, and then the north-south streets as well, and come back with a more formal recommendation that kind of addresses all of those key roads and heading in both directions, including Boulevard.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilor Winograd.
Thank you. And I just 2 points that are things I'd like maybe to address. One is in that analysis, it's not just the routes, but the type of infrastructure, including whether they're sort of painted lanes or protected lanes or painted lanes. A lot of different options in terms of that, as opposed to sort of what we've been doing in most places, which is sort of sharrows or paint or maybe geographically protected lanes by an extra wide one, but we haven't done protected street lanes either. So to the extent that we're putting it out for more study, I'd like to see that option as well explored in some depth. And then the other thing, just in terms of I know we have a lot of viewers today. Procedurally, if you could explain where the authority is on sort of the final decision on lanes and how it works with our current policy.
Thank you.
Big person.
And through you, Madam Chair, addressing Councilor Winograd's questions to his first one, or in agreement with his statement, this isn't just going to include streets and north and south and east and west. It's design. So what's the best design for, for example, if we do choose Boulevard being that access, into Hartford, what is the design of that particular bike route that we would implement? And as I said, it may not be Boulevard. It could be Farmington Avenue. It could be Asylum. Could be all of the above. And what design works for each of those streets separately, and bring that back formally to CPED as our recommendation in terms of how we would move forward. Ultimately, the authority does lie with the town manager's office as a local traffic authority. Those decisions will ultimately fall on the desk of the town manager to make, in consultation certainly with our town council, which we're doing today, as well as our pedestrian and bicycle commission, and other organizations like West Hartford Bike. And what we've been doing to date has included that process already. So Ped Bike has been involved in this decision that we had moved forward with originally on Boulevard. So that will continue overall with our update to the bicycle facilities plan.
Madam Chair, this is Sherry Cantor. I also just wanted to emphasize the fact that, and I know there's a lot of interested parties listening in, that West Hartford really is going to be a better and stronger community with the ability to for people to get on a bike in a safe way. But with the Vision Zero task force established and hiring those consultants, it really makes sense for us to incorporate all of this into that same work about road safety for all users. So I would, I heard Deb, Councilor Pullen say a pause. It's not a pause actually, as it is a more in-depth comprehensive plan for all users. And so I really look forward to that comprehensive, seeing the work and that comprehensive plan that really will make the connections that we've worked so hard. I actually equated to the Trout Brook Trail. We had it took a long time to put all the pieces together, but the vision ultimately was there to take that Trout Brook Trail and create this 3.6 mile trail that a lot of people now are providing feedback on how positive that is. That's really the impact that we want. So thank you.
Councilor Stanowitz.
Yeah, thanks. And so during this decision-making process with the increasing to a comprehensive plan, I hope that we consider the emails and communications that we've received from those that will be affected, specifically on Boulevard and such. Those people have bought houses there, knowing that they have parking out front, and I just hope that we listen to those concerns in this decision and this comprehensive plan that's being developed.
Through you, Madam Chair, certainly that will drive a lot of our work. Absolutely, would be that community engagement piece. And once we look at what those designs are in each of these streets, and the impact that it may or may not have on the residents, we will include them in that process as well.
And we're looking at late fall for initial. Is that?
We would, at this point, we're heavily involved in Vision Zero, and they're doing both Vision Zero and the update to the bicycle facilities plan. So we will have to establish a timeline with them. Okay. Vision Zero is kind of driving our focus right now, at least for the next few months. So we don't we want to make sure we don't distract them too much from that work as well. So it's trying to balance both this and our Vision Zero work. Our commitment to the council is to provide a action plan by January of 24.
Okay. Mr. Martin, I think you had your hand is up. I don't know if it was, okay.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to point out you were actually heading down this path in that there's going to probably be some time in between the pavement being completed on Boulevard and the ultimate decision as to what happens there for pavement markings. And we obviously have a fairly busy road that we need to provide some sort of traffic control. So there is a scenario where we put down just temporary markings, and I don't want the people listening to think that the decision was made. So we have to make sure that people are aware. Should we go and put down, say, a double yellow down the center of the road? That's not the final decision, but we do need to have some traffic control. We have temporary, we call them tabs there now to provide some guidance, but just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you. And so we'll get that information when the decision's been made on how the temporary is going to be set up temporarily. And will residents on that street be notified, or how will that?
Yes, we will. We'll reach out to the residents and let them know of the work that will be forthcoming.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions on this before we move on? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to staff reports. And we have our community development update from Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be brief. There's 4 that I want to touch on. So if you want to wait to the end to ask questions or just stop me, either is fine. First one is the West Hartford Center Master Plan. This project is moving along pretty well. We have received 30% design plans and offered our consultant Stantec review comments, which they are working through. Once they get through that layer of information, they will go into 60% design. And once that's done, we will engage the public again and you as well to give an update as to what this will look like, specifically the designs for LaSalle Road and Farmington Avenue. I would anticipate early fall, just the target date, in case you're wondering. Next one is flood mitigation improvements. As you know, we've done a lot of flooding studies and we are going through the designs for improvements. We recently held a public information meeting for residents or anyone in town that was interested in the Trout Brook area, say between Lawler and Asylum Avenue. Our consultant and I attended to give an update, which that project is in 60% design. We wanted to engage the public to give them an update, but also to reach out to them before the next level, which is permitting. We have to get a local permit and then state permits. Those, the local at least, is a public information or public hearing, excuse me. So I didn't want them to be caught off guard. The presentation was posted on the engineering's website for anyone who might be interested. The next one is just a quick mention about our construction season. Very busy time for community development. Obviously, you're seeing construction. We just talked about Boulevard. We're doing, I think there's 4 roads presently that have some phase of reconstruction underway. And we are getting close to doing our second round of milling and paving, which is scheduled to start around July 5th, weather permitting. That round should take about 3 weeks. All of the roads that are being worked on for reconstructions and milling and paving are in my report, as well as on the engineering webpage. Also wanted to mention our Trout Brook Trail Phase 6 project, which is underway and working out really well. We hope to have that open and available to the public by the end of the summer. I'm saying August. We'll see. There's still a good amount of work left, but we had a little issue with regards to the ground and rain, and it was pretty saturated, but we've worked through that. So paving is coming up. We're very excited about that project getting completed. And the last one, which was mentioned by the gentleman from Merge briefly, which is the Memorial Road Connector, which is a project that I'm working on with other staff and 3 property owners. So specifically, it's the potential to open up the driveway that exists between the intersections of LaSalle and Arapahoe and South Main at Memorial, which I'm referring to as the Memorial Road Connector. So we're working with Corporation Council and we're interested in doing a trial to see how it would function, to make sure that there aren't any unexpected safety issues or problems that may occur once we do that. So we wanted to do a trial. If it works out, it's successful, then we would move forward, and then we would incorporate it into the wayfinding project as well. So we're working with the property owners. It requires us to do easements because we would be opening up private property to public to drive. We have an easement already for people to use the walkway that's there, but not the roadway. So we've been engaging. There's actually 3 property owners. And once we get through that next step with their concurrence, we would bring the easement information to this committee and then go forward with a full town council if you concur with that approach. And that is my update. Answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Sorry, does any do any committee members have questions, or anyone else have questions?
This is Mayor Cantor. If I just wanted to ask about speed controls on the memorial memorial. What did you call it? The memorial connector. We had talked about, you know, speed bumps or something that it would and it's one way going east, correct? Is that the plan? And we had talked about potentially speed bumps and or speed humps or something to make sure, because there's so many pedestrians there.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, I'll answer the mayor's questions. When we talked to the property owners, they were very concerned about that as well as the town. So specifically, the Memorial Road connector would be one way from the intersection of LaSalle and Arapahoe to about where the bollards are, if you're familiar, right on the property line. And then from there, it would be a 2-directional road. 2 reasons for that. One is that westerly section of what I'm calling the Memorial Road connector, which, by the way, we can change the name. It's just too narrow with the Brico's building and the sidewalk. It's too narrow. Right now there is 2-way flow, but if you have much more traffic, we don't feel as though it would be safe or function well as 2 directions. And the property owner on LaSalle was fine with having it 1-way eastbound. The other property owner, however, wanted to maintain the 2-way flow for the garage access, which we supported. So in order to do that, there would be a pinch point around the property line where we would make sure that it's narrow enough to slow traffic down. There's also a crosswalk presently, which we would change to a raised crosswalk. Beyond that, we're looking at possibly doing another speed hump or something else. This is part of the reason to do the trial, to see how it functions and then react accordingly. I believe that answered your question, but if not, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Were there any other questions? Okay. Thank you for that update. If there's no other questions, I'll move on to the economic development update, which will be given to us from Ms. Gorski.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. I am just going to share my screen. Okay, can everybody see that? Great. So this is a economic development quarterly report. We had been in the habit of doing this last year, getting back into the habit of providing this to the CPED committee quarterly. So this is April through today's date. So I will update this before it goes on the website, on the economic development webpage, through the end of June. So this is just some leasing business activity that I wanted to move through. Most of this likely folks are familiar with, but again, this is, you know, April through today's date. So a lot of really great activity. Chop Salad is now open in Bishop's Corner, and I'll just kind of hit some of the highlights here. Gran Gusto recently opened in the former Rizzuto space. Boqueria, which is a tapas restaurant, is currently building out in the former Balo space. a more recent announcement, the bakery by Place to Be. Place to Be is expanding and adding a second location in Blueback Square, and this will be in the former Spot Coffee space. So excited to have a cafe back in Blueback Square. Muse is currently working to relocate into a larger space on Isham. Bodhi Boutique. This is a really exciting, new business that recently opened earlier this month in Blueback Square. So this is a women's retailer. So really excited when we are able to welcome a new retailer here. She's been open for a couple weeks and they've been incredibly busy. So excited to welcome them here. Boost Bowls, they also opened around the same time as Bodhi Boutique. So they are in the former Lobster Craft space. So they sell, smoothies, smoothie bowls, some really healthy grab and go items. When they opened, they had a giveaway and they had a line out the door wrapping around the block. And they've seen some really solid support ever since opening a couple of weeks ago. Some kind of flying under the radar, the space that is directly to the left of Bricko, it had formerly been a hair salon. Royal Burger is a new restaurant that's currently working to build out in that space. Americana opened on Park Road and they're doing really well. Bud R Cannabis, so that will be the town's first adult cannabis retail establishment. They are currently building out in their space at 1037 Boulevard, so that's at the corner of Boulevard and Prospect. They are working towards a mid-July opening in that location. And then a second, the second of the two establishments that we are able to approve under the town's ordinances. Sweet Spot is currently, they recently received their site plan approval and they're currently working to build out in the former Caribe space. So that is at 2 Park Road at the corner of Park and Prospect. The Starbucks opened over off of Kane Street. So exciting because that is the first drive-through Starbucks that we have, and they have seen a flurry of activity there. Elmwood Bark and Stone, they are open at 69 Talcott. Purgatory, several of you had gone to their grand opening. This is a really great story. They had been in the Gastro Park and they were doing so well in the Gastro Park that they relocated to their own storefront at 625 New Park. So really excited to have an expansion and keep them here in town. To backfill that location, Alvarium, roasting company, opened in their former space. Chop Poppy is a cafe that is building out in the Shield Street Plaza, close to Adong. Central Rock Gym, they had recently opened, also just a fantastic space and a really cool business for us to be able to have here in West Hartford. And then a couple of items down in Corbin's Corner, Club Pilates, and then Crumble Cookies directly next to each other in the Corbin collection are both now open. And we're seeing some significant advancements on the Our House space, which is the Scandinavian furniture store that's going into the former Ruby Tuesdays space at the West Farms Mall. Here are some market statistics. So this was in terms of what I would normally give for the leasing and business update. I think that the current vacancy rates that you see here on this screen are indicative of the fact that we're not seeing quite as much activity at this point in time. We saw this huge flurry of activity, and quite honestly, it has started to slow down slightly as we're seeing some all-time low vacancy rates, and really spaces to be able to lease are few and far between, which is a really, really great problem to have. So just moving quickly through this, currently we're at 1.6% vacancy for industrial space. That is in terms of what I can I can locate, that is probably the lowest that we have ever had, certainly in terms of the data that we collect. It's the lowest that it's been in over 12 years. So we virtually have no industrial space left. Multifamily jumped up slightly to 3.8. So that really is only as we're starting to see new units come online, specifically with the One Park development. So they recently received an okay to be able to occupy 88 units in the retrofit section of the conversion of the Old Sisters of St. Joseph. So as we're seeing that kind of significant number of units come online, that's what we see. That's where we see this small bump in terms of the vacancy rate. Office 5.1%. You know, I have participated in some office related kind of work groups throughout the region. You know, what we're seeing throughout the region and nationwide is office is really challenging, and quite honestly, typically communities, especially those that are around us, are in double-digit vacancies. So we're kind of looked at as an anomaly within the region, and we're doing quite well here with office here in West Hartford. So that's really great news. And then our retail also continues to decline. Couple of property sales. I'll just highlight 994 to 1000 Farmington Avenue that sold to Lewis Real Estate Services. So that's really great news because that is a tenant, ground floor tenant in the building, and he purchased the building. So really looking forward to having a new owner there. And then the former Companions for Living space also at also sold back in May. It's 312 North Main Street. So there's currently a veterinarian who is looking to locate in that space and has purchased the property. And then just in the interest of time, you know, I won't touch on many of the development activities. Some of these you are well aware of as, you know, it's within the quarter and council has already seen these. One thing that I do want to highlight is 579 New Park Avenue. So this is a potential development project that has received a lot of attention very quickly. It has gone once informally for initial study session with the Design Review Advisory Committee back in June. And because this is a proposed development under the town's newly adopted transit-oriented development zoning district, and would be a mixed use, a brand new mixed use building. You know, I think that folks were really excited to be able to dig into this particular project. So this is still incredibly preliminary, really early on. So local developers here in town, the Lee brothers, that are working with staff to be able to further plans for this proposed redevelopment. And then one additional item just here that I wanted to highlight is 1051 to 1061 New Britain Avenue. So that's the former Puritan. This is the very first site plan application that the town received under the new TOD zoning ordinance that we adopted last year. So we are working, you know, very closely with the property owner and his professional team to be able to address several comments through a routine review process of this site plan application. And we are hopeful that within, you know, the next 30 days, it is likely that hopefully they can receive site plan approval here. So we'll certainly keep council updated as we move through this review and approval process. Next step in that process, if you recall, probably about 2 years now at this point in time, we received a brownfield grant for that site. So we will work directly with the property owner to move into a demo and remediation phase of that project prior to construction. And then just to wrap up with this presentation, this is new. I just wanted to call out some economic development team highlights. So some of the stuff that we've been working on throughout the quarter outside of our normal, you know, leasing and business support, business retention efforts. On May 10th, we were requested to participate in a really cool event. So for folks who may not be aware, on the second floor space in the Corbin collection right next to above REI, and then the two new businesses that had opened, Crumble and Club Pilates, there is a 40,000 square foot vacant space. So this is a space that's kind of sat there, but had, you know, some interest and some activity, but with new brokers, they decided to do this brokers reception, showcasing the space. So I think there was probably about 20 different brokers from throughout the region that came here. And it was really great that the town was invited to participate so that we could give additional perspective in terms of the market in West Hartford and the area and things that are coming down the pike. So we are working very closely with the brokers in order to hopefully get some really good traction on this space. May 23rd, we had our third annual Community Job and Resource Fair. So that was a continued partnership with the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce. We had it at the Elmwood Community Center. Highlights: 26 businesses participated, over 120 job seekers came through in the 3-hour period that we held this. So definitely a huge thank you to the staff at Elmwood Community Center that helped out. Public Works helped with lawn signs and printing those and putting those up. Feedback that we received was outstanding. We did a survey to all of the businesses that participated. Overall, people were really pleased with this event, including 2 businesses who emailed me who said that they were able to fill positions with folks that they met at the job fair. So really good interactions with the businesses, and, you know, a great community event. And then on June 5th, we worked to pull together a workforce development roundtable. This is what we would hope would start to be a series. So specifically, we focused on manufacturers. So, you know, I think that where you all know this, but maybe not necessarily everybody in the community or folks outside of West Hartford know how many manufacturers that we have. We actually, where we're really known for our, you know, hospitality, food and beverage, manufacturing jobs is actually 10% of the total job share that we have here in West Hartford. And 3 of probably our top 10 businesses are manufacturers. So, you know, as they have very unique needs, we decided to have this workforce roundtable. We had participation from various partners throughout the region and the state. You know, the state of Connecticut through the manufacturing office participated, Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology, Capital Workforce Partners, you know, just really, really great. The community colleges system, really great partners who are in this ecosystem who can listen to our manufacturers based on their needs and help us to react and respond so that we can ensure that they have the staff that they need in order to fulfill contracts that, you know, they might currently have or that they might want to hopefully bid on in the future. So there's a lot of takeaways from that event, but overall a really great event. And then I'll wrap up real quick with the last couple. So the mayor was unavailable on June 7th. So she asked for me to participate in a mayor's panel at the annual Connecticut Commercial Real Estate Conference. So this was at the Delamar. So they've been doing this mayor's panel for a couple of years, and it was focused on economic development. It was a really great opportunity for us to showcase West Hartford, especially as it relates to, you know, some of the similarities or differences that we have with other communities that are located next to us or sprinkled throughout the region. So there was about 150 people who were in attendance, and we received a lot of really great feedback and excitement surrounding everything that's currently going on here in West Hartford. And then I will just highlight the last one, which is I was one of 20 economic developers who was asked to participate in an economic development informational webinar with the Commerce Committee in the legislature on June 14th last week. So this was something where, you know, as they have wrapped up the session and they're trying to figure out, you know, future agendas, they wanted to dig in to see, you know, what was going on with the communities and what the big areas of concern are or items that they potentially could start to bring up in future sessions. So items that I had mentioned in my testimony included transportation. So access to transportation for businesses, specifically further building out the Hartford rail station that we have, slated for West Hartford, and continuing to build out rail lines in the state of Connecticut. Workforce development, I referenced the workforce roundtable that we had. Affordable housing, which the legislature passed several programs, as I understand it, for this, but the continued need for affordable housing and why it is so necessary and crucial, not only for communities to support residents, but also to support our businesses. Cost of construction, just as that continues to escalate and there are continued challenges that we hear statewide and nationally. And then lastly is prevailing wage requirements. So this was specifically to hopefully propose a right sizing of DECD, Department of Economic and Community Development, their prevailing wage requirements. Anytime that someone, specifically a municipality, as the conduit to funding, would apply for any state grants that are under that office. If you are requesting funding north of $1 million, then prevailing wage would apply to the entirety of the project. So oftentimes that really kind of drives up the total cost of the project and is not something that is actually helpful or productive to close that gap. So obviously, paying prevailing wage is something that is very, very much so necessary, but trying to look a little bit further and dig a little bit deeper to see if there are any additional options to amend this there. So with that, that's the conclusion of my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
No questions, but Kristen, through the chair, Madam Chair, Kristen, you want to just talk about Triumph for a minute, or?
So as it pertains to the contract that they just won? I will mention Triumph. So Triumph is they're our second largest manufacturer. So they're over off of Flatbush. So they are an aerospace manufacturer. We've been working with them, really hard on a lot of different initiatives. So they are fantastic. They were just featured in Hartford Business Journal yesterday. They won, a huge additional contract that is going to bring more jobs here to West Hartford, which is just outstanding. So they're north of 500 employees. So we're hoping to be able to work with them to increase that share here. As I mentioned, they participated in our workforce roundtable, continuing to work with them as well on some hopeful infrastructure improvements on their site on Flatbush. So over the years, they've done a number of improvements to this very, very large facility. In order to continue to pick up additional contracts, they need to do some additional infrastructure improvements. So we are working with them on that, but they are just a absolutely fantastic employer and business for us. And it's really amazing some of the technology that they have and components that they go to support, specifically with helicopters and a lot of military aerospace components that they're building out of this facility here.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I'll just say that I'm supporting local business. My husband just brought me a very unhealthy breakfast from donut from Donut Crazy. So, so if there are no other questions, we can move. Are there any future agenda items? No? Okay. Well, thank everyone for coming. Today, we got a lot of information, a lot of really good information and exciting information. And I will move to adjourn the meeting at 9:23 a.m. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.